You're listening to Simply the Best Sports Take, the best podcast breaking down the best stuff in sports with host Sean Bingham. His takes are so good, he dropped the mic, but then you wouldn't be able to hear him, and that would suck.
Welcome into STB Sports Take, Simply the Best Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Bingham. Thank you for being here. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. We had a weekend just packed full of football. Obviously, BYU loses. Heartbreaking game to Boise State. Disappointing, frustrating game to Boise State. Going to get into that. First off, though, got to ask you to please subscribe because you guys are awesome. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor Podcasts. Everywhere you get your podcasts, we are there. Please hit the subscribe button. And guys, we got to dive right into BYU losing to Boise State. Of course, they lost to Boise State. Of course. I mean, this is what BYU does. I'm a BYU fan. I'm a BYU grad. I grew up a BYU fan. I went to the school. I graduated from the school. I've been to like 90% of the home games over the last 20 years. That's not an exaggeration. I'm a BYU fan. I'm also a BYU realist. And this is just what BYU does. The problem is BYU is drinking its own Kool-Aid. BYU is all wrapped up in the hype, top 10 ranking, 5-0, and looking forward to the Big 12 matchup against Baylor this coming Saturday, and I think just overlooked Boise State and got beat down. BYU looked really bad. I don't think the rain helped any. We saw just the awful fumbles. Oh my goodness, those fumbles just crushed the Cougars, didn't they? Horrible fumbles, bad penalties. Just looked out of sync, just didn't look quite right, and lose the game 26-17. Very disappointing. Dropped 9 spots in the rankings, 10 spots in I think the coaches poll. Let's pull up those rankings right now, actually. I've got them here somewhere. Okay, so in the coaches poll, BYU dropped from 10th to 20th. And then in the AP poll, they dropped from 10th to 19th. So any chances of the college football playoffs are long gone. I mean, those were already like a run the table and hope for the best, with other teams doing us some favors along the way, which is the podcast I did just last weekend before the game. Very unfortunate it turned out this way, but this is expected. I even said in the last podcast, could BYU run the table? Yes, they could. If they did, would they belong in the college football playoffs? Yes, they would, in the sense that like they will have been undefeated with a schedule good enough to get in, but they would not be actually one of the 4 best teams in the league or in the country, and certainly not capable of beating Alabama or Georgia. Then Alabama goes and loses, and so that they look mortal all of a sudden. But I did say if I'm a betting man, I'm not going to bet for BYU to run the table. That's just very difficult to do, and it's just very not BYU to do, unfortunately. And right on schedule, they lose to Boise State at home. So disappointing. Favored by, I think at 8 was the line. Jaron Hall starts. He played okay. Didn't play great. He did have the interception late that I want to discount a little bit because the game was already over and he was just trying to get the ball downfield. Really it was desperation. So if you exclude that, he was 22 of 37 or 22 of 36, we'll say. 302 yards and a touchdown. So he actually played okay. He didn't play great. It kind of made me wonder if he's the guy or not. I do think there could be a quarterback controversy coming for the Cougars. I do think Jaron Hall is still the best option, but this game's got to make you wonder. But little insight here. I'm not going to name any names. I want to have total anonymity here. But a close friend of mine, very close and trusted friend of mine, is very close with one of the coaches at BYU. And there are many, and so I'm just going to leave it as vague as that. But this is very real source, very real story, okay? And this friend of mine spoke to one of the coaches at BYU on Thursday, okay, just a couple days before the game. And this coach, who again will remain unnamed, as will my friend, said that they're going to crush Boise State. Quote, I wouldn't be surprised if we won by 30. So when the coaches are overlooking an opponent, you can only imagine what the players are doing. If the coach is going out and telling his friends at social gatherings, oh, we're going to win by 30. We got this one. No problem. If a coach is saying that, what are the players thinking? They're looking ahead to next week. They're resting on their laurels. They're all pumped, drinking their own Kool-Aid that they're a top 10 team. Boise State's got a losing record. No problem. This will be an easy one. And boom, you lose a home game on national television. Horrible loss for the Cougars. All eyes were finally on Provo. It's on ABC in the middle of the day. The previous games had all been, if they were nationally televised, they were on at midnight Eastern time, okay? Because they were 8:30 p.m. kickoffs Mountain. That's 10:30 p.m. kickoff Eastern time, which is where the majority of the country is. Do you think those people are watching at 1 a.m. when the game ends, 2 a.m.? I don't think so. So this was the first time that all eyes were on the Cougars. It's ABC, home game at 1:30 p.m. Mountain. So that's 3:30 Eastern. Middle of the day on a Saturday, everybody's watching. And the Cougars completely lay an egg. 4 turnovers. Again, the interception we're going to discount a little bit because it was just whatever. It was the end of the game. But the fumbles were just awful. Oh my gosh, those fumbles. The one fumble that stands out the most is, of course, we get it down we drive 73 yards. We're down inside the 20 to start the second half, start of the third quarter. And we get down inside the 20-yard line on a great run and freaking fumble it. And it's just such a killer. That just killed any momentum. That was the third fumble of the day. And it just felt oh my gosh, this just isn't our day. Then a couple drives later, we have a long, sustained drive, get down in the red zone, have multiple false starts to kill the drive, get bailed out on a pass interference call, have first and goal inside the 5, can't punch it in, turn it over on downs. It was just bad. So the keys to the game were this. One, you got to admit, you have to, I shouldn't say admit because not everybody knows the story that I know, but I'm telling you now. But we have to realize clearly the Cougars overlooked Boise State. I think that's the first and foremost biggest problem. We overlooked Boise State. BYU overlooked Boise State. So that's the first problem. You got the coaches out there bragging to everybody how they're going to win by 30. Okay, so what message are they portraying to the team? What mentality does the team have coming into the game? So that's the first problem, overlooking the opponent. Second problem, the rain killed us. 3 fumbles. It just felt like the rain came. The first 2 drives, we drive down, field goal. Then we stop them very easily, go down, drive, touchdowns, 10-0. At that point, I'm thinking, we are going to win by 30. We are going to win by 30. Then the rain comes, and all hell breaks loose. The ball just becomes as slippery as can be. Jaron Hall's a little off target, and the rain affects you. It does. It affects you. And so the rain was a big problem. So we have those horrible, awful fumbles, 3 of them. And then our third down defense was horrific. We had them on 3rd and long multiple times. 3rd and 12, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. Boise State, convert. Just first down after first down. Our third down defense was awful. Awful third down defense for the Cougars. And so one of the defensive linemen from last year, can't remember his name, he actually happened to be sitting right behind me. I was at the game. He happened to be sitting right behind me, and he's just going berserk, screaming at the D-line, wake up, D-line, hit the quarterback. And I'm thinking, hey, listen to him. This guy can actually talk. He's not just an armchair coach like the rest of us. He was on the team last year at your position. And it was true. Our defense just could not get to the quarterback. Boise State's offensive line was just pushing us back the whole game. And, so again, the fumbles, overlooking the opponent, third down defense being awful, and our red zone offense was just not there. I don't know what was going on. The play calling was weird. It just didn't seem to be working for us. And then we had several awful penalties. I mean, we bailed them out on one really critical one where we stopped them on a third down finally, right? And instead of them punting, we get called for a very blatant pass interference. And this was in the fourth quarter. A very obvious, easy to call pass interference. And right when it happened, I'm like, oh, dude, come on. How many times do we have? I mean, have these guys not played football? I only played for 1 year of organized football, but I've watched long enough to know if the ball's coming, if the ball's in the air, you got to turn and look at the ball. You have to turn and look at the ball, especially on third and long, dude. This is the difference. This is make or break for the game. You're down 2 scores. This is your chance to stop them deep in their own territory to win the battle of field position and have a chance to give your team a chance to get a score and get back in this game. Instead, we get an obvious pass interference call, and obviously that reignites their drive, gives them an automatic first down, and kills more clock, gives us less worse field position when we do stop them. It just was so penalties, rain, turnovers, bad third down defense, bad red zone offense, And I think all of that can be tracked back to problem number one, which is overlooking your opponent. And so don't do that. The chances for the playoffs are, of course, completely shot to pieces. Zero chance. We could run the table winning 75-0 for the rest of the season. They still would find 4 teams that they would put ahead of the BYU Cougars to put in the playoffs. That being said, I still think there's a glimmer of hope, and most of you are going to disagree with me, which is fine. I still think there's a glimmer of hope at a New Year's Six Bowl. Now, that means BYU has to run the table, which, if I'm being completely honest, as someone who loves sports more than teams, so trying to be as non-biased as I possibly can, I don't think BYU is going to win out. I think they have a very tough game this week against Baylor. We still have to play Virginia. We still have to play Washington State. We still have to play USC at the end of the year. I mean, it's far, far from over. Look at those games right there. Baylor, Washington State, Virginia, USC. And then we do have 2 cupcakes in there as well. So of our, what do we got? 6 remaining games. I think 5-1 is a really good goal. Finish 10-2 and just get a good, fun bowl game. If somehow we do finish 11-1, so we run the table from here on out, go 6-0 to end it, beating. I wish Baylor was ranked this week. Baylor's not ranked. I don't know why. In fact, I tweeted at Spencer Linton, who's obviously BYU Sports Nation, the face and voice of BYU Sports Nation, and good friend of mine who's been on the podcast before. He put out his own rankings, did not include Baylor in the top 25. I tweeted at him like, no Baylor? Because we need Baylor to be ranked this week to give us a kind of another little resume notch, beating another ranked opponent. I think Baylor will end the season ranked. They look pretty solid. In fact, I'm curious if there's a line out on that game. I'm going to look right now. Baylor, though, does not make the top 25 despite being 5-1. Let's see here if there's a line. I don't see a line yet for this game, but the matchup predictor is definitely predicting Baylor to win it. But again, Baylor 5-1, and this is Baylor's schedule so far. This is why I think they belong. So they've beaten a bunch of kind of nobodies, Texas State, Texas Southern, but they crushed them 66-7, that Texas Southern anyway. Kansas, they beat good, which not a good football school, but at least a Division I Pac-12 or a Big 12 school. Beat them 45-7. They beat Iowa State, number 14 Iowa State. Their only loss was to ranked Oklahoma State, who's really good. And then just yesterday, or just on Saturday, they beat West Virginia 45-20. So to me, I'm looking at that, I was like, they've beat a ranked opponent. They've only lost once, and it was to a ranked opponent. And they've won every other game pretty handily. So at 5-1, with 2 games against top 25 opponents, 1-1 in those games, to me, they should be ranked ahead of like a Baylor, or they are Baylor, ahead of like a Florida, maybe an NC State, or an Arkansas. NC State's big win is, of course, against Clemson, which that's a big win, kind of. Clemson's 3-2. They're not that great this year. They're just not the same Clemson that we're used to, and so I don't know that that's as valuable as a win as it once was. And so when you have 2 losses, should you really be ranked ahead of a team with 1 when your opponents are pretty equal? To me, no. Arizona State leapfrogged BYU. Well, they have the same record, and they played head-to-head, and BYU won. So to me, that's kind of silly, That's why you play the games against each other, is to find out who the better team is. So we already know who the better team is out of BYU and Arizona State because they played each other, and BYU won. So for BYU to be ranked behind Arizona State, which they are in one poll and not in the other, and I'll pull those up right now. So in the coaches poll, Arizona State is still behind BYU at 22, but in the AP poll, and in Spencer Linton's poll, by the way, Arizona State's ahead. And I'm just like, well, Arizona State and BYU played each other and they have identical records. BYU has beaten Pac-12 Utah, Pac-12 Arizona, Pac-12 Arizona State. They beat Utah State. Like they've played good teams. Their only loss now is to Boise State, who's going to prove to be a really solid team. That's a loss that lose by 9 to a team that's probably going to finish the season 8-4, 9-3, something like that. And that's our only loss. So if we can go on and win 6 in a row, I still think that BYU has a chance at a New Year's Six bowl because they have solid opponents left. They're ranked 19th right now with a real good chance to beat Baylor, who will finish the season ranked most likely, to beat USC, who just got beat by Utah, so that's all weird. So if we can win these games, there's a chance. There's 12 teams that make a New Year's Six bowl. 12 teams. Will they take BYU if BYU can climb back up into 15th in the country, which is very, very, very attainable and reasonable to think. If BYU could get up to around 12 to 15th ranked, top ranked, independent, if they can somehow climb ahead of Notre Dame, if Notre Dame drops a game or two, why not? Climb ahead of a Cincinnati, climb ahead of a Coastal Carolina. Can they do that? Because right now, Coastal Carolina is 6-0, ranked 15th. Cincinnati is 5-0, ranked 3rd. Georgia climbs into the top spot. Then Iowa, who got a big win. A lot of stuff's going to happen though up there at the higher ends. And so can we surpass Notre Dame, Coastal Carolina, Cincinnati? All three of those teams are ranked ahead of us. They're going to have to lose 1 or 2 games, and we're going to have to win out for that to happen. So we'll see. I don't think all hope is lost at New Year's Six. I think it's a long shot, but it is within reason if you get some help from outside sources. Okay, moving on to the NFL. Great day in the NFL yesterday. First off, the Chiefs might be done. They get crushed, absolutely crushed by the Bills. And you hear everybody, all the talk this morning is how the Chiefs are done. And I'm just thinking, I don't think so. So I looked up the Chiefs' schedule. They've had the hardest schedule in the NFL to date, I would argue. They've had to play the Ravens, and I'm trying to find it here. They just, of course, lost to the Bills, which Bills are one of the best teams in the entire league. The Ravens are one of the best teams in the league. That's another loss of the Chiefs. Their third loss, because they're 2-3. Their third loss is to the Chargers, who are 4-1, looking as hot as could be. Fantastic comeback win against the Browns yesterday. Unbelievable comeback win against the Browns. In fact, the Browns are the first team in NFL history to score 40 or more points and have 0 turnovers and lose. Yes, first time in the history of the NFL, a team scored 40 or more points with 0 turnovers and still lost. That's the Cleveland Browns yesterday against the Los Angeles Chargers. But anyway, getting back into the Chiefs. So let's look at their schedule so far. So I said those 3 losses. They beat the Browns and they beat the Eagles. Those are their other 2 games. Next week they have Washington, my favorite team, who lost to the Saints. I think they'll beat Washington, unfortunately. Then they play at Titans. Then they play the Giants, Packers. It doesn't really let up. They'll probably beat Washington. They'll probably beat the Giants. I could see them likely beating the Titans. And then Packers, that's a coin flip. Raiders, Cowboys, Broncos, Raiders, Chargers, Steelers, Bengals, Broncos. That's how the season goes for the Chiefs. So are the Chiefs capable of getting back to a Super Bowl this year? I still think they are. But man, they look very pedestrian right now. They look very, very beatable. In fact, everybody is beating them. They're 2-3. They're like Clemson. They're like your name and your players and your coach. It still makes me think you're a top 2-3 team, but your record is showing that you're not. Your weekly results are showing that you're not. I'm going to say, though, that the Chiefs still are a top 3, 4, 5 team in the league. Something's off right now. They got to get it together. I think that they will. But it's an interesting thing to watch. Tom Brady yesterday, speaking of records like the Browns, being the first team to score 40 points, have 0 turnovers, and lose. Tom Brady, at age 44, for the first time ever in his entire career, threw for over 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. The guy is 44 years old. 44 years old, and he throws for over 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. I don't know how he's doing it. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the TB12 method, because we've seen him with his shirt off. He's not like some specimen at all. He's got a total dad bod. But the guy, cerebrally, is just so far advanced beyond everybody else. His will to win is advanced beyond everybody else. His intelligence at the quarterback position is beyond everybody else. His preparation, you got to think, is beyond everybody else. His athleticism is way behind everybody else, but he's showing that it just doesn't matter. He's so much better at every other facet of the quarterback position that it just doesn't matter. So Tom Brady and the Bucs, 4-1. I'm kind of rooting for him. I personally love cheering for greatness, so I'm kind of rooting for him. But again, first time in his career to go for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he's 44 years old. It's truly remarkable, truly remarkable. So NFL, let's take a look at the standings right now and see where we're at. We're like the third of the way through the season, which is just crazy to think about. Lots of teams at 4-1. Bills 4-1. Chargers, like I said, 4-1. Cowboys 4-1. Packers 4-1. Bucks 4-1. Rams 4-1. Then you have the Cardinals sitting alone at 5-0, the only team at 5-0. And I believe the only winless team is the Jags at 0-5. Nope, the Lions are as well. So the Jags and the Lions are at 0-5. So things are going very much how I thought they would. The Cardinals are overachieving just slightly. But man, that NFC West is tough. Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks, Niners. Those are just four solid teams. My Washington football team sitting in second place in the NFC East at 2-3. Tough loss yesterday, and Heineke did not look all that great, which was unfortunate because I had been singing his praises of late. But anyway, love the NFL. Big game tonight. In fantasy, I am up by like 28 points, and so I have a very solid chance to win, with the exception of my opponent has Lamar Jackson at quarterback. That's his only position left to play, and Lamar, can get over 30. He likely, I don't want to even say it out loud. He can. Lamar Jackson could do it to me. I'm a little nervous, but we'll see. So that's the game tonight. But I want to say one last thing before wrapping this up. Ben Simmons, who I've talked about many times on this podcast, which, by the way, I went back and all of the Philadelphia people that came after me when I said Ben Simmons was overrated, that he didn't deserve Defensive Player of the Year, that he didn't deserve Rookie of the Year. There's kind of like this rivalry between the Jazz and Ben Simmons because of Donovan Mitchell getting his Rookie of the Year stolen from him by Ben Simmons, and then all the chat that he should be Defensive Player of the Year over Rudy Gobert. So there's kind of just like this unspoken, unofficial maybe rivalry between Ben Simmons and the Jazz, and I mentioned that many times in the podcast, and I had a bunch of people from Philadelphia commenting on my YouTube and stuff. So I went back to all of them and commented like, "Oh, you still love Ben Simmons? You stand by this comment basically? Like, this didn't age well." Kind of like my podcast saying that the Cougars could go to the college football playoffs. Whoops. But anyway, so Ben Simmons now, apparently, if he doesn't play this game coming up against the Brooklyn Nets, the season opener, he's going to lose $1 million. So there's now talk that he's coming back to the team, that he's in the process of coming back to the Philadelphia 76ers. How freaking awkward is that going to be? He's going to go back and play with these guys? Yeah, right. How is he going to look Joel Embiid in the eye and like any of his teammates and be like, hey guys, like, I'm back. Like, everyone knows he's just there to collect a paycheck. He still wants out. They're still going to look to trade him. But supposedly they're getting very close to him mending fences and returning to the team and participating so that he can get paid. But I think they will still look to trade him, which if I was them, I would look to trade him. But I see what they're trying to do. They're like, his stock was so high just a couple months ago before the debacle in the playoffs. His stock was so high, and now it's not. Now we've seen what he does in clutch time. Now we've realized thoroughly what it means to not be able to shoot in this league as a point guard or even free throws. And it got into his psyche. We saw him make bad decisions down the stretch when he passed up that dunk for a pass. And now he wants out. And so you add all those things up, and it's like nobody's gonna give you much for that guy. It's like he's not as good as we thought, and he doesn't want to play for you. So he wants to leave, so it makes him worth less, which I think is why he's going to come back, because it's like, well, you're going to lose all this money unless you come back, mend some fences, put on a happy face, play pretty well for a little while for us, and we'll still look to trade you before the All-Star break. So I think that's what's going to happen with Ben Simmons. I would want no part of this guy. I would want no part of Ben Simmons. I really wouldn't. I just don't buy the hype. I think he's overrated, and I think he's a diva, and I think he's so arrogant he can't get out of his own way. And learn how to shoot free throws and humble himself and learn how to advance his game in that way. So, but I'm excited for NBA to start. It's crazy. Like, in fact, it was 1 year ago today that the Lakers won the bubble title, but we've already had an entire season and another finals and another off season since then. So in the last year, we had 2 off seasons and an entire season. And that was exactly 1 year from when the Lakers were crowned bubble title, bubble champs. So I'm excited for the NBA to start back up. Football's in full swing. This is just the greatest time of the year. Fall is the greatest for sports. I mean, the NFL and college football are in full swing. Like, we're in the middle of these seasons that are just shaping up to be so incredible. We didn't even get into Alabama losing to Texas A&M. What a crazy, crazy loss that was for the Crimson Tide. Makes them look very beatable now. They drop all the way to 5th. You got to think they could still go on and run the table. If they can win the SEC, which would require them to beat Georgia, they're going to get to the college football playoffs. That's the only way they get there, though, at this point. Whereas before, they could have lost to Georgia in like the title game or something and still made the college football playoffs. But now you can't lose twice and make the college football playoffs. So Alabama's going to have to win out, and we'll see if they can. It's them and the Cougars, baby. Just kidding. Okay, that's all the time I have for today, guys. Please hit the subscribe button. I am out. Peace.
Thanks for hanging with Simply the Best Sports Take. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and check out stbsportstake.com. Simply the best in sports.
'Cause we are